The investigator handed me a note, "Don't go home run." That night, I discovered why. My peaceful life as a mother and grandmother for many years was suddenly shattered by an unimaginable betrayal. My son Victor and his wife Lydia were secretly plotting to take control of my estate, using my frail health to their advantage. But I am not someone who can be easily defeated. I won't let them destroy the life I have built over the years, and I will fight to reclaim everything. My name is Evelyn Montgomery, and I've spent 65 years of my life in a quiet, peaceful town in Maine. The sound of the ocean waves crashing against the rocky shore was always the rhythm of my days, constant, steady, a reminder that some things never change. The house I lived in was small but filled with memories tucked away on the outskirts of a sleepy little village. For years, I had grown accustomed to the simplicity of my life. I had no need for luxuries, no need for excitement. All I ever wanted was to raise my son, Victor, with the same quiet devotion that had been passed down to me. I thought I'd done that. I thought I'd done well. But like the calm before a storm, things were about to change, and I had no idea how violently the winds would turn. It was late autumn when the first sign of trouble appeared like a dark cloud on the horizon. My husband Henry had passed away a decade ago, leaving me to raise Victor alone. After that, the years seemed to blend together, days spent tending to my garden nights, reading by the fire, and occasional visits from Victor and his wife Lydia. They lived in the city, but they would come by once in a while bringing their daughter Sophie, who had grown from a baby in my arms to a bright young woman. Every time they visited, I felt a sense of duty, of love, and of fulfillment. But there was always something nagging at me, something I couldn't quite place. A weight in the air that I couldn't shake, a feeling that things were too smooth, too perfect. I couldn't understand why it felt like my family was drifting further away, even when they were right in front of me. And then, one crisp October morning, the letter came. I was sitting at my kitchen table, sipping my coffee, when I saw the envelope. It wasn't from anyone I knew. The return address was unfamiliar, something corporate sterile. My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper typed in plain font. I could feel the weight of it, a sense of dread that clung to the letter, like the chill in the air. It was from a lawyer, a name I didn't recognize. The contents were brief but precise. "Mrs. Montgomery, it began this letter serves to inform you of actions that are currently being taken by your son, Victor Montgomery, and his wife Lydia. They have initiated proceedings to take control of your estate. I strongly advise you to take action and protect your interests." My stomach sank, my heart pounding in my chest as I read the words again. The shock of it was immediate, sharp, like a slap across my face. My family, the ones I had devoted my entire life to, were they really conspiring to take what was mine? The letter went on to explain that they had been consulting with a series of lawyers, planning how to gain control over my house and finances, using my health as leverage. My mind raced. Was this some sort of misunderstanding? How could they betray me like this? The room began to feel suffocating, the once familiar walls closing in on me. I couldn't breathe. For years, I had been the one caring for them. Victor, Lydia, Sophie. I had sacrificed so much, but this was too much. My own flesh and blood plotting against me. The thought was too foreign, too unreal, like something out of a nightmare. My hands shook as I folded the letter back up and stuffed it into my purse. I needed to talk to Victor. I needed answers. But there was no time to dwell on it. I made my decision in that moment. No matter what the truth was, I couldn't allow myself to be manipulated. I couldn't let them take everything I had worked for, everything my husband and I had built together. So I packed my bags. I needed to go to the city. I needed to confront them face to face and get the truth out of them. As I drove to Victor's house, the road stretched out before me, silent and endless. I couldn't stop thinking about the letter, the cold finality of it. It didn't make sense. I had always tried to be a good mother, a good grandmother. I had given Victor everything. The best education, the care and love he needed. I gave him a life, a future. But somehow he had turned against me. I didn't know if it was the weight of his failures, the debts he had accrued, or the lure of a life of luxury, but I couldn't help but feel that I had failed him. Or worse, that he had used my love and sacrifice as a way to manipulate me into a corner. The closer I got to the city, the heavier my thoughts became. I was no longer sure what to expect when I arrived. Would they deny everything? Would they pretend to be innocent, to act like nothing had changed? Or would they finally admit to what I already knew in my heart? This betrayal was real. When I pulled up to their house, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. I didn't even recognize the place anymore. The house, once warm and welcoming, now felt cold, distant, like a house of cards built on lies. As I rang the doorbell, my hands trembled. When the door opened, I was greeted by Lydia, her smile wide but fake. It was the smile of someone who was hiding something. Mom. What a surprise. What brings you to the city? She asked, her voice too sweet, too rehearsed. I couldn't bring myself to speak the words out loud. I just stood there for a moment looking at her, trying to see past the mask she wore. But all I could think was, what happened to the family I thought I knew I need to talk to Victor? I said, my voice steady but firm. The house felt emptier than ever as I stepped inside. Each room echoed with a silence that only made my heart beat louder. And as I waited for Victor to come down from his office, I realized that the calm I had always known, the peace I thought would last forever, had disappeared, replaced by something far more sinister. A storm was coming, and I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to weather it. In that moment, I knew my life would never be the same. The family I had spent a lifetime building was crumbling before my eyes, and the worst part was that I hadn't even seen it coming. The moment I stepped into Victor and Lydia's home, I knew something was wrong. The familiar scent of vanilla that once greeted me like a warm hug was gone, replaced by the sterile chill of something unspoken. The air hung heavy with tension, a kind of unease that settled into my bones. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first, but I could feel it, a shift in the atmosphere that had taken root since the last time I visited. The walls of this house, once filled with laughter, now seemed to echo with silence. An oppressive kind of silence, as if everyone was waiting for something to happen, waiting for me to notice something. Victor had always been the golden child, the one I poured all my hopes and dreams into. He was supposed to take care of me when I got older, just as I had taken care of him when he was young. But today, as he walked into the living room to greet me, his smile was strained, his eyes avoiding mine. I had known him long enough to recognize the signs, the small, almost imperceptible changes that meant something deeper was at play. "Mom, what a surprise," Victor said, his voice carrying an edge I couldn't place. "What's going on? You said you were just stopping by." I looked at him closely. Really looked at him. The man standing before me wasn't the son I had raised, the one who had once told me everything no matter how trivial. This was someone else, someone distant and closed off. His appearance had changed too. His once neat clothes were now wrinkled, his posture slouched, as if the weight of something was pressing down on him. The golden-haired boy I had nurtured through his darkest days had somehow morphed into a stranger I could hardly recognize. "I just needed to see you," I replied, forcing a calmness into my voice that I didn't feel. I couldn't let him see the panic creeping into my heart. "I've been thinking about the letter I received." At the mention of the letter, I saw the slightest flicker of guilt pass across his face before he masked it with a quick smile. A smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The letter, Victor said, his voice carefully neutral, but I could tell he was trying to control his reaction. "Mom, it's just a misunderstanding. I'm sure it's nothing." "Nothing?" I asked, arching an eyebrow. "You're telling me that a lawyer, a complete stranger, has been contacting me about my own son, trying to gain control of my estate and finances. and it's nothing. Victor stiffened, but before he could respond, Lydia entered the room. Her steps calculated, each one heavy with an air of false cheerfulness. Her smile was even more practiced than Victor's, her eyes gleaming with a kind of sharpness I hadn't noticed before. "Evelyn, darling, you're here." Lydia's voice was like syrup sweet, but thick with something darker underneath. "We were just talking about you." She flashed a glance at Victor, her expression momentarily flickering with something unspoken. It was then that the pieces began to fall into place. This wasn't a simple misunderstanding. They were planning something, and I had just walked right into it. I forced a smile, though it felt foreign on my lips. "I'm sure you were," I said, taking a seat in the living room. "But I'd like to hear from both of you about this misunderstanding. You know, the one that involves a lawyer and the possibility that I could be losing control of my own assets." Lydia's eyes widened just for a moment before she regained her composure. "I'm sure it's nothing, Evelyn. Just some paperwork we've been discussing. You know how complicated these things can get. Your health isn't what it used to be, and we just want to make sure everything is taken care of for you." Health. The word hung in the air like a heavy stone. "I'm perfectly fine," I said, my voice a little sharper than I intended. "And I don't need anyone deciding what's best for me. I've managed just fine on my own, thank you very much." There was a brief silence, and then Lydia spoke again, this time, more pointedly. "Of course we know that. But we just want to make sure you're safe, Evelyn. You've been getting older, and sometimes people need to make decisions for themselves that they might not be able to make when they're not well." I could feel the words cutting into me, each one a subtle, well-placed jab. They were trying to manipulate me, trying to make me doubt myself, trying to make me question whether I was still capable of making my own decisions. And that, I realized, was exactly what they were after. They're going to try to make me seem senile, I thought, my mind racing. They want to control everything. I had always prided myself on being independent. Even after Henry died, I had remained strong, managing the house, my finances, and my life. But here now, in the middle of their carefully constructed web of lies, I could see just how far they were willing to go to take that away from me. The conversation shifted after that. Lydia's words became more insistent, more convincing, as if she were trying to wear me down. But I refused to let them see my weakness. I sat straighter, my back stiffening, and I fixed my gaze on Victor. He seemed to be shrinking under my scrutiny, his usual confidence faltering under the weight of his guilt. "I'll take care of everything," he said, finally breaking the silence, his voice laced with a kind of forced calm. "Just give me the paperwork, and I'll make sure it's all in order. You don't need to worry about anything." I could see the cracks now. The layers of deception were slipping. I wasn't some old fool. I knew exactly what was happening. Victor was trying to take control. But I wasn't going to let him, not without a fight. Later that night, as I lay in bed, the weight of the day settled heavily on my chest. I'd seen the way Victor and Lydia exchanged looks, the way Sophie had barely spoken, her eyes darting away whenever I caught her gaze. The house, once a place of comfort and warmth, now felt like a prison. I had walked into their world, and in doing so, I had unknowingly stepped into a trap. But there was one thing they didn't know. I wasn't just going to roll over. I had spent my entire life building something from nothing. I wasn't going to let them take it from me. I wasn't going to let them destroy everything my husband and I had worked for, and I would make sure that they understood that. That night, I called my lawyer. My hands trembled as I dialed the number, my mind still reeling from the conversation with Victor and Lydia. But there was no time for hesitation now. I had to be smart. Had to play this game the way they were playing it, with precision, with strategy. When the lawyer answered, I didn't waste time. I told him everything, the letter, the visit, the things they'd said. And as I spoke, I could feel a fire igniting within me. This wasn't just about money. This was about my dignity. This was about showing them that I wasn't going to be a victim. Not this time. I want you to start gathering evidence, I told him. I want to know everything about what they've been doing, who they've been talking to, what they've been planning. I'm going to expose them. I'm going to make sure they understand the consequences of their actions. I hung up the phone, a sense of resolve flooding through me. For the first time in years, I felt something stirring inside me, something fierce, something unstoppable. I was done being the helpless old woman they wanted me to be. I was done letting them walk all over me. Tomorrow, I would confront them again. But this time, I wouldn't be so easily fooled. This time, I would take control. As I lay there in the silence of the night, I knew one thing for sure. My family was about to learn the hard way that there were some things no one, not even them, could take from me. The following morning, I woke up with a clear sense of purpose, something I hadn't felt in years. The sunlight creeping through the curtains seemed to hold a different meaning today, almost like a promise, a symbol of the fresh start I was about to make. I had spent hours thinking about what to do, planning my next steps. There would be no more hiding, no more pretending. It was time to take back what was mine and to make my family understand that I was not the helpless old woman they believed me to be. When I walked into the living room, I could see that they were already waiting for me as if they had anticipated my move. Victor, Lydia, and Sophie sat stiffly on the couch, all eyes on me. Their forced smiles did little to hide the tension hanging in the air like a storm cloud. Victor's face was pale, and Lydia had that look in her eyes, the one she always got when she was trying to control the situation. Sophie, on the other hand, sat silently, her gaze avoiding mine. "Mom, good to see you up early," Victor said, trying to sound casual, but his voice cracked just slightly. It was the same voice he had used his whole life when he wanted something from me. It made my stomach churn hearing the familiarity in it, but today it no longer had the power to manipulate me. "I'm glad you're here." Evelyn Lydia chimed in her tone, sugary sweet, though her eyes flickered with something darker. "We were just talking about you. We've been meaning to discuss your health with you. You know, to make sure you're doing okay. You've been looking a bit worn out lately." I could feel the false kindness in her words. They were working up to it, I could tell. This wasn't about my health. It was about them, about their greed, about their plan to steal what was mine. They wanted me to believe that they were looking out for me, that this was all out of love and concern, but I wasn't blind anymore. The act had been overplayed and the cracks were showing. I stepped forward, steadying myself before I said anything. Enough of this, I said, my voice clear and firm. The words felt like power, like a shield I could now carry. "I know what's been going on. I know what you've been planning behind my back." Victor's expression faltered for just a moment, and Lydia stiffened the smile on her face, slowly fading into something more guarded. They didn't think I knew. They thought I was too old, too naive to understand what was happening. They were wrong. "I'm sorry, Mom," Victor said, his voice now tinged with something I couldn't quite place. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the lawyer," I said, folding my arms across my chest. "I'm talking about the letter I received, the one that told me about your plans. I know you've been trying to take control of my estate, my money. I know about the consultations you've had with lawyers to have me declared incompetent. I know everything." The silence that followed was thick with disbelief, as if my words had knocked the breath out of them. But I could see it now, the panic in their eyes. They hadn't expected me to confront them so directly. They hadn't expected me to know. "Mom," Lydia said, her voice trembling now, though she quickly regained her composure, "I think you're misunderstanding everything. We've only been trying to help you. We've been worried about you. You're getting older, and we just want to make sure you're well taken care of." "Don't lie to me," I snapped, my voice sharp. "This isn't about taking care of me. This is about you trying to steal from me. You've been working together to get what you think is rightfully yours, and I won't stand for it anymore." Victor stood up, then his face flushed with anger. "You have no idea what you're talking about. This is for your own good. You're not capable of managing everything anymore. We've been doing this because we care about you, but if you want to make things difficult, then fine. You'll regret it." His words were a threat, plain and simple. But this time, I wasn't afraid. They had underestimated me, and now I would show them just how wrong they were. "Regret," I said, my voice calm but full of authority. "The only one who should regret anything is you, Victor. You've been lying, deceiving, and manipulating me for months. You think I don't know? I know about the meetings with the lawyer. I know about the forged documents. I know about the fake will. I know everything." Victor's face went white. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I had hit a nerve. And in that moment, I saw it. Guilt, fear, the real Victor, the man who had been hiding behind all the lies. He wasn't the confident, self-assured son I had raised. He was a desperate man backed into a corner with nowhere to run. Lydia stepped forward, her eyes now flashing with anger. "You don't know what you're talking about, Evelyn," she said, her voice dangerously low. "This is all for you. We're just trying to help. But if you want to make things harder, we can make things harder. You don't want to see the truth." "The truth," I repeated, my heart pounding. "What truth? The truth that you've been trying to destroy me, that you've been planning to rob me of everything I worked for." "No, Lydia. I think it's time you finally understand something. The truth is, I'm not the fool you think I am. The truth is, I've known all along." The weight of my words hung in the air. For a moment, everything was still. And then, as if on cue, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I pressed play, and the recording filled the room, the voices of Victor and Lydia echoing back at them. I had been prepared for this moment for days, knowing that I couldn't confront them without the proof they would need to back me up. Victor's voice, distorted by the recording, filled the silence. "We need to make her lose her mind, Lydia. Switch her medications, hide her things, make her think she's crazy. Once she's in that nursing home, we'll have full control. It's the only way." Lydia's voice was next. I know. We'll get it done. She'll be in that nursing home and then it's ours. We'll get the house, the money. Everything. All of it." The room seemed to spin as their betrayal became crystal clear. I watched as Victor and Lydia both went pale, their faces contorting with shock and fear. The truth was now laid bare before them, and there was no denying it. You recorded us," Victor whispered, his voice shaking. "You knew," I said simply, "and I'm done being manipulated." Lydia tried to recover, but her voice cracked as she spoke. This isn't what it looks like. You don't understand. We were just..." "Stop," I said, cutting her off. "You were stealing from me. You were plotting against me, and now you're going to pay for it." I had no more words left to say to them. The damage had been done, and it was time for the truth to be known. They were trapped in their own lies now, and I wasn't about to let them twist it anymore. "I've already contacted my lawyer," I said. Taking a step back, my voice resolute. "I'm taking this to court. You've lied, you've cheated, and you've betrayed me. And now you're going to face the consequences of your actions." Victor's face twisted with a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You think you can win this? We're family, Evelyn. You'll regret doing this." I stood tall, refusing to back down. "No, Victor, I won't regret this. The only thing I regret is not seeing your true face sooner." With that, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving them behind. The air seemed to clear as I stepped out of their house and into the crisp morning. I'd faced the storm, and I had come out stronger on the other side. I was no longer the victim in their game. I had finally reclaimed my power, and nothing, not even them, could take that from me. The next few days felt like a blur. The storm had broken, and everything I had feared was beginning to unfold. The silence that followed my confrontation with Victor, Lydia, and Sophie was deafening, and it seemed like the world had turned upside down. For so long, I had lived with the illusion that I was safe, that I could trust my family. But now it was like a dream had shattered, and the pieces were falling all around me. My once peaceful life, built on years of hard work and sacrifice, was crumbling under the weight of betrayal. I barely slept in those first few nights. My mind raced as I replayed the confrontation over and over again. I could still see the look on Victor's face when the recording played the horror in his eyes, and Lydia's attempt to control the situation even as the walls of her lies collapsed around her. They had thought they were clever, that they could outsmart me, but they had underestimated me. They hadn't anticipated that I would see through their deceit or that I would be prepared. But they had made a fatal mistake. They had assumed that the love I had for them would blind me. They were wrong. I spent the next few days in a state of heightened awareness. My lawyer, after receiving all the evidence I had gathered, began the process of building my case. The recordings, the documents, the bank statements, it was all there, undeniable proof of their conspiracy. But it wasn't just about the legal battle. It was the emotional fallout that shook me the most. I had known that there was a risk in confronting them. I had known that exposing their lies would have consequences. But what I hadn't prepared for was the way it made me feel, how deeply it hurt, how it stripped me of the hope I had once held for the future. Victor tried to reach out several times. His calls were urgent, filled with panic, but I didn't pick up. I couldn't. Each time I saw his name on the caller ID, my stomach twisted into knots. The lies, the manipulations, how could I look him in the eye again? He had betrayed me in a way I could never forgive. His voice, once familiar and comforting, now felt like a reminder of all the years I had spent trying to be the mother he needed, only for him to turn his back on me when it suited him. And Lydia, she was no better. Her false charm, her attempts to disguise her greed with fake affection, had left me reeling. At the same time, Sophie's silence weighed on me. She hadn't called once. She hadn't come to see me, not even to apologize. I had raised her, taken care of her when she was a child, and now she was complicit in this plot. I had always believed in her goodness, in her potential. But now she seemed as lost to me as the others. What had changed? What had driven them to do this? I couldn't stop thinking about Sophie. The girl I had once adored, the granddaughter I had nurtured and loved, seemed to be caught in the same web of lies. Was she manipulated by her parents, or did she willingly take part in their plan? My heart ached with the uncertainty. I wanted to believe that she was innocent, that she hadn't been fully aware of the gravity of the situation. But deep down, I knew better. She had been silent for too long, and silence was as much a part of the conspiracy as the lies they told. I decided that I couldn't let it go. I couldn't let them off the hook. But I also couldn't ignore the fact that they were family. For all their faults, I had loved them with everything I had. The question of what to do next weighed heavily on me. Should I confront Sophie face to face and demand the truth from her? Or should I let it be knowing that what she had done was just as unforgivable as what her parents had done a week past, and my lawyer arranged a meeting with me? I walked into his office with a heavy heart, fully aware that the next steps would set everything into motion. There would be no turning back now. The trial, the hearings, the press coverage, everything would be laid bare for the world to see. I couldn't protect them anymore. The truth had to come out. Mrs. Montgomery, my lawyer Thomas, began, his voice calm but serious. I've reviewed the evidence you've provided. It's clear that Victor and Lydia have committed fraud, conspiracy, and elder abuse. But there's more to this. We've uncovered evidence that they've been siphoning money from your accounts for months, using forged documents to transfer assets, and even trying to sell your house without your consent. My stomach tightened at the mention of the house. It had been Henry's legacy to me, the one thing we had built together, the place where I had raised Victor. And now they had been plotting to sell it behind my back, to steal everything. Do we have enough to move forward? I asked, my voice thick with emotion. Thomas looked at me with a steady gaze, as though weighing his words carefully. We have more than enough. But we need to act quickly. They're already trying to cover their tracks. Victor has already contacted a few contacts in real estate, and Lydia has been liquidating some of your more valuable possessions. I felt a surge of anger flood through me. They were still at it even now, still trying to get away with it. They thought they could outsmart me, but they hadn't accounted for the one thing they had never expected: I wasn't going down without a fight. "Get it all," I said, my voice firm. "Take everything you need to make sure they can't get away with this. I'm not letting them ruin my life any longer." The days leading up to the trial were a blur of paperwork, court filings, and preparations. The media began to pick up the story, and soon the headlines were filled with the scandal surrounding my family. At first, it was difficult to see my name splashed across the news. My life was suddenly public, my private battles laid bare for everyone to witness. But I couldn't focus on that. I had a greater purpose now. The truth had to come out. It wasn't until the day of the hearing that I felt the full weight of what was happening. I walked into the courtroom with my head held high, surrounded by my legal team and a group of supporters who had been following my case. The courtroom was full of spectators, reporters with cameras, and even a few elderly people who had come to show their support. As I walked to the stand, I could feel the eyes of the room on me, but I stood tall. I wasn't the woman I had been when this started. I was stronger now, and I was ready to take them down. Victor and Lydia sat across from me at the defense table, their faces pale, their eyes darting nervously. They had spent the last week trying to paint me as unstable, trying to convince the world that I was just an old woman who had lost touch with reality. But today, I would show them that I had never been clearer, never been more certain of the truth. When it was my turn to testify, I stepped forward, my voice steady as I addressed the court. I've lived a long life. I began my words carrying the weight of everything I had experienced. I've worked hard, sacrificed everything for my family, and in return, they have stolen from me. They have lied to me, manipulated me, and tried to take everything I've worked for. But today, I'm standing here to take that back. I told my story step by step, from the first signs of betrayal to the final confrontation. I played the recordings of their conversations, presented the evidence of the fraud, and made it clear to the court that I wasn't just a victim. I was a woman who had fought back, a woman who had refused to be silenced. The reactions from the courtroom were mixed. Some were shocked by the depth of the betrayal, while others were moved by my determination. But one thing was certain: my family's lies had been exposed. There was no turning back now. The court would decide their fate, but I knew one thing for sure: I had won. After the trial, the legal consequences began to take shape. Victor was sentenced to 12 years in prison for conspiracy, fraud, and elder abuse. Lydia received a sentence of 10 years, and Sophie was given a lesser sentence for her role in the scheme, though she was still facing criminal charges. The punishment seemed fitting, though it was nothing compared to the emotional toll their betrayal had taken on me. But as I walked out of the courtroom, a small weight lifted from my shoulders. The battle had been won, and I could finally begin to heal. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. 6 months had passed since the trial, and I stood at the threshold of my new life, one I had never expected to find myself living. The events that had unfolded had shaken me to my core, but they had also transformed me in ways I never could have imagined. I had faced the darkest corners of betrayal, discovered depths of greed in the people I had loved most, and yet somehow I had emerged stronger. The fight had been long, but I had persevered, not just for justice, but for my own sense of self-worth. I wasn't the woman I had been before. I wasn't that innocent, trusting grandmother anymore. The truth had burned through the lies, and in its wake, I was reborn. As I looked out across the garden of my new home, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. The small house I had bought on the outskirts of the city was nothing like the grand estate I had once lived in, but it felt right. It was simple, cozy, and it carried with it the promise of a new chapter. The roses I had planted with my own hands bloomed vibrant and strong, their petals unfurling to the sun, as if to say that no matter how broken things had seemed, beauty could still be found in the cracks. The house was modest, but it was mine entirely and completely. No one could take it from me. The memories of my old life of raising Victor, of the quiet years with Henry, lingered in the corners of my mind, but they no longer had the same weight. I had come to terms with the fact that the life I had known, the family I had once cherished, was gone. It wasn't just the betrayal that had shattered me. It was the realization that I had been blind to the truth for so long. I had loved them with all my heart, but in return, they had used me. They had exploited my love, my trust, for their own gain, and that I realized was something I could never undo. But I could move forward. I could choose to live differently. And so I did. Sophie had reached out to me a few weeks after the trial. Her voice on the phone was shaky, uncertain, but beneath the hesitation there was something real, a crack in the armor she had built around herself. I hadn't expected to hear from her, and at first I had been hesitant to speak to her. After all, she had been part of the scheme. She had allowed herself to be swept up in their lies. But when I listened to her, really listened to her, I heard the hurt in her voice, the regret. She wasn't the same young woman I had raised. She had become something else, something broken by the same forces that had torn Victor and Lydia apart. She wanted to meet. She wanted to apologize, and as much as I wanted to turn my back on her to protect myself from further harm, I knew deep down that I couldn't abandon her. Not completely. So we met at a small cafe downtown. When I saw her sitting across from me, with her hands trembling in her lap, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow. She looked so different, stripped of the arrogance she had once worn like armor. "I don't know where to start," Sophie said, her voice small. "I don't even know if you'll ever forgive me, but I need to say something. I need you to know that I didn't want any of this to happen. I was scared. I was scared of them, scared of what they were doing, but I was scared of losing everything too. I didn't want to lose you, Grandma, but I didn't know how to get out of it." I sat in silence, my hands folded on the table, my heart pounding in my chest. It was the first time I had heard her speak so honestly, and the rawness of her words shook me. I had spent so much time angry, so much time focused on what they had done to me, that I hadn't allowed myself to think about why Sophie had done what she did. She had been a victim, too trapped in a world she hadn't known how to escape. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Sophie," I said, my voice calm, though my heart was heavy. "You made your choices. You chose to stay silent. You chose to help them. But I see now that you were just as much a victim as I was. And that doesn't make it okay, but it doesn't make you evil either." Sophie's eyes welled with tears. "I never meant to hurt you. I never wanted to be like them. But I was scared. I was so scared." "I know," I said softly, "but fear isn't an excuse for betrayal. And you need to live with that. You need to understand that what you did hurt me. It broke me, Sophie. But I also know that people can change. You have a chance to do better, to make better choices." She nodded, her shoulders shaking with the weight of her emotion. "I want to do better, Grandma. I want to make things right. I don't know how to fix everything, but I'm trying. I'm trying to be a better person." I studied her for a long moment. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she could change, that she could make up for what she had done. But I also knew that the road to redemption was a long and difficult one. She had a lot to prove, and I couldn't just hand her my forgiveness. She needed to earn it. "I'll help you, Sophie," I said, my voice steady, though my heart was conflicted. "But you have to understand that forgiveness isn't something I give easily. You have to prove that you're worthy of it. And you have to show me that you're willing to do the hard work to make amends." She nodded, her face filled with determination. "I will, I promise." We parted that day with a quiet understanding between us. It wasn't the closure I had expected, but it was something better, a possibility. A possibility for healing, for growth, for rebuilding the relationship we had once shared. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. As for Victor and Lydia, they had tried to contact me multiple times after the trial, but I had refused to respond. I couldn't bring myself to speak to them. They had shown me who they truly were, and I had no place for people like them in my life anymore. They had stolen from me, betrayed me, and manipulated me for years, and there was no going back from that. They would face the consequences of their actions in prison, and I would live my life without them. That was the only justice I needed. 6 months later, I found myself sitting in my garden watching the sun dip below the horizon, the sky painted with shades of pink and gold. It had been a long road to get here, but I was finally at peace. I had reclaimed my life. I had reclaimed my dignity. And I had learned something important along the way, that family isn't always the people you're born into. Sometimes family is the people who show up when it matters most. It's the people who stand by you, who support you, who love you without trying to take from you. I had learned to love myself again, to trust myself again, and that more than anything was the greatest gift I could give myself. As I sat in the quiet of the evening, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: contentment. For the first time in a long time, I was truly free. And that freedom was mine to keep. I've always believed that our greatest strength lies not in how we handle success, but in how we navigate through life's challenges, especially the tough, unexpected moments. Whether it's dealing with betrayal, loss, or moments of deep self-doubt, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. But I've come to realize that every setback is an opportunity to grow, even when it feels like you're at your lowest point. There's something powerful about resilience, the ability to get up, dust yourself off, and keep moving forward even when the road ahead seems uncertain. We often put so much pressure on ourselves to have everything figured out, to be in control at all times. But I've learned that it's okay not to have all the answers. What matters is showing up for yourself even when it's hard, and trusting that each step forward, no matter how small, brings you closer to the person you're meant to become. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that you don't have to face life's struggles alone. We often try to keep things bottled up, believing that we have to handle everything on our own. But reaching out, whether to friends, family, or even strangers, can bring new perspectives and support when we need it the most. Never be afraid to ask for help or lean on others. It's not a sign of weakness, but of strength. Life can be overwhelming, but together we can lift each other up. Take a moment to think about the challenges you've faced in your own life. How have they shaped you? What strengths have you discovered in yourself that you didn't know existed? I'd love to hear about your journey. What lessons have you learned that have helped you move forward? Share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. Your experiences are valuable, and they could be the inspiration someone else needs today. Thank you so much for reading and for being a part of this journey with me. Your support and engagement mean more than you know. Remember, no matter what you're going through, you have the strength to overcome it. Keep pushing forward and trust that your best days are ahead of you. Take care, and I look forward to hearing from you.